What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Care to Elaborate with Taylor and Travarus. Today, we're going to be talking about work-life balance, work-life harmony, prioritization. How do you make sure that all the things you're supposed to do get done, while
Yeah.
also making sure that the bills get paid by the thing that's supposed to pay your bills? Before we get there, Taylor, how you doing?
I am doing well. I feel fantastic today, or one day closer to a day where I can go to sleep all day. That's what I'm excited about. But I'm doing well. It's getting colder outside. I got my sweater on because it's a
Sweater
little
weather.
chilly. I'm like, yeah, I need to give me a man's layup with if you're listening. Kidding. Joke,
The key
joke.
to her heart is LinkedIn. So what's your LinkedIn again, just so
Which
we can make sure?
I actually have asked people in the club for their LinkedIn when they ask me for my
Like,
number. I'm like, no, but you can get my LinkedIn though. I have done that. So sorry to the
oh, like y'all
people
swapping QR codes in the
knowing the
club.
QR codes. They be
They got the app. Do they have the app?
barely, barely.
Okay.
There. And when I get on the app, I'm like this. Anyway, I'm not even about to talk about them, but to that point, yes, the key to my heart is LinkedIn. So if your profile updated, I'm be like, ooh,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. For the kind of woman that I notice you are, getting somebody's LinkedIn in the club is like on par. It makes sense. It's like,
that's what people be
oh,
saying. They're like, that makes sense for you. Yeah.
you should do a master. You should do a LinkedIn learning on dating via LinkedIn.
And to the people listening, you got to be careful with that because some people be sliding in my DMs on LinkedIn, and I don't know if I like that. Like, at least,
Okay, all right.
you know,
Is professionally like,
yeah, you got to
hey,
act like you want to net because that's also another thing I've been
oh, you want
experiencing.
to be lied to?
See, that's the thing where I'm like, I don't really know what to do because that's been very common recently. People will tell me they want to network with me.
They want to build.
They really be trying to just get with. I'm like, no, no, no. I thought we were, colleagues. I thought we were learning from each other, but they be trying to learn more than knowledge.
Yeah, they trying to elaborate.
Yeah,
They try,
they really, yeah, a lot. But anyway, that's enough about that. How are you today, Trevor?
we will make another episode on that. That is hilarious. I'm also looking forward to sweater weather. Looking at my yard right now, the leaves are falling, which means one more chore for me. Life of a homeowner, right? If you listen to this from your apartment, from the cozy maintenance
Mhm.
apartment that you don't have to do the big things on, congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't you can walk to home ownership. Don't run because it's expensive.
Yeah.
Blessed, but it's expensive. And you never really know what the next thing is that you have to take care of. For me, this season comes with cleaning your gutters. So I gotta clean my gutters. I gotta buy an apparatus to get the leaves up, or I gotta pay somebody to do it. And it's all about that prioritization, which is what we're going to chat about today. I'm a parent. I'm a small business owner. I work 9 to 5. I'm a husband. So we running a full-time podcast. So we're entrepreneurs, visionaries, yada, yada, yada. Just on my side, that's a lot to navigate.
Do you
And
sleep?
Taylor, I barely. And Taylor, for you, you have a pretty large LinkedIn following. You actively post there. You have a full-time job. You have a social life. Um,
No kids though.
no, for all those listening, before you slide in the LinkedIn DM, no kids. How do you maintain your level of balance or harmony between and also working out, being active, right? That's also something else.
Into the gym today.
What I played ball last night. So, what are the priorities and how do you structure them from day to day?
This is a great question. And the real answer, y'all know I'm honest, is I'm still figuring it out. There are some days where I do not go to bed until 2 a.m. because I am trying to make sure I keep up with my friends. And then I have to make sure I go to the gym after work. And then I also, have another little side hustle where I tutor kids. And then it's just like,
What? I didn't know
yeah,
that.
I tutor kids after school. And yeah, so if your child needs to be tutored, call me.
What area?
Look,
Tell.
in the DMV area, if you need a tutor after work hours, after 6:30, 6 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
for a little hour or something, call me. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, all of this stuff combined, there are some days when there is no balance where I'm truly like yesterday, for example. Yesterday I went to work at, oh my gosh, I think I went to work at I left to go to work at 8:45 a.m. So I got to work at 9, worked 9 to 6. Then I had
Mm,
to go tutor after that. Then I was trying to go to the gym. Then I had to cook dinner. Then I had to walk the dog. Then I had to, then people were calling me. And I was like, where
mm-hmm.
I haven't even gotten a chance to just sit down and breathe. Like what? And so to answer your question in the shorter term, I am still finding the balance. My goal every day is to at least do most of the things that I do. I am getting to the point now where if I don't do all of them, I try not to beat myself up. If I can't go to the gym,
Yeah,
then tomorrow it is. I just be trying. I just try.
I get it. It's a lot. And for me these days, very different than you, my priority is the family, right? My daughter will be 2 very soon, so prioritizing time with her and my wife because another thing, people, this is all cliche, but marriage is work. I was just talking to my wife about this. My wife's my home. We talk about everything like that. We were friends first, which is what I appreciate. Uh, but life just be happening. You work, she works, you got this, you got that. You communicate on the necessary items, but you don't talk to each other. So you have to make a conscious effort to like carve out time to be like, how you doing for real? Like not just the customary like I'm good, I'm good. Like nah, you have to really make work and then find time. And we've been struggling to find time for ourselves
Mm,
because it's a lot. So you have that, which is the priority. Then work and finding my way with navigating changes, remaining ambitious, wanting to chase these goals down, but can I be as ambitious as I was before with work not being my number one priority? Also, I've been playing basketball my whole life. Basketball is my form of working out and my form of therapy for real. Am I at a good clip? I'm playing ball 3 times a week, and I'm trying to get back to that now. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been playing ball, but that's become more of a priority. But I also own a small business, a small clothing business, which I neglect often because it just never meets the criteria to be
mm.
number one. And if I put more effort into it, I know that it'll yield that. But also, we have this podcast, which we're really, really dedicated to, which also has risen
Risen.
is higher in the ranks than other things because I think that this creative endeavor feeds a part of me that doesn't feel like it has to be prioritized. If that makes sense. It just I find the time for it and we make it work. But yeah, there is no balance for
There is.
real.
It doesn't exist. It's a myth.
No.
Okay. I want to talk about something you said because you said in the past, work was your number one priority.
Yep.
And as Gen Z, I'm gonna be honest, work has never been my number one priority. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I more so value my life because at the end of the day, we talked about this before, but at the end of the day, a job can come and go. And so my whole thing is my life is this is it. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I get this one life. So talk a little bit more about that, how you navigated in the past before your family. Was work actually your number one priority or how did that work for you?
Well, when I say number one priority, what I mean is my career trajectory, not the place I work at.
Okay.
So, meaning the places that I put myself in order to be set up later is important to me. So, like I told you all before, I lived in California from 2015 to 2023. What brought me to California was working in education. When I got there, I didn't have anything else to do but dedicate myself to just working and making a name for myself in the education space. When I transitioned into tech, that was a year and a half process of going from, hey, I want to work at a big tech company to actually my first day on site. So for a year and a half, that was completely dedicated to, and I was in grad school at the time, completely dedicated to finishing my degree, and which also sets me up for bigger and better things. But also, how can I make more steps into transitioning into the tech space? So I would say for that year and a half, 2 years between grad school and transition was like all dedicated. And I told Taylor this offline, but I put my social life on pause um, because I just never wanted to have my social life interact with the potential for me to snag a job. Imagine you try to talk to a girl at a bar, focus on the wrong thing, and you got an interview with her on Monday. Sick.
Sick.
sick, right? So I never wanted to, and that's far fetched, but I never wanted to have that. So when I say that my that work was my focus or priority, it was more or less the entire thing about my career where I wanted to go to set myself up.
Okay, I see. And I
Yeah.
think I'm in that part of my life too where work, I'm like you said, I'm more so focused on my career trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
But even in that, still, I think I'm just young and turnt, y'all. I'm just in that time where that is always what I'm thinking about, but I'm also always thinking about my relationships and making sure I am feeding and nurturing
Yeah.
those things. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
is, for me, that is the biggest balance there because I never want to be the bad friend or the bad daughter or the bad sister because I am so focused on my career trajectory. And I've seen people do that. And that is one of my top fears. I cannot stand when people are
Yeah.
so focused on leveling up to the next level that they neglect the people that have helped them get to where they are today.
That's whack. And I think something that you just articulated that we have in common, which I think may be easier, is being a transplant. You're not
Oh,
from the DMV area.
I'm not.
So there's a certain thing about going to a place for work and getting to it. And you also have to navigate when you move to a new place that's like not drivable from like your hometown. You are focused on the work that got you there. You're also focused on building roots with friendships there. So you're dedicating yourself to wanting to be a good friend and show up. But also, you don't want to lose connection with the people who are home,
Right.
right? So when you move to a brand new place and you are like a person who's had really great friendships but want to build some more, work almost can't be your number one priority
We
because you'll
can't.
be a hermit, right? Living in California, the first 30 days, I told myself that I couldn't say no to anything. And if you know me, I say no to everything.
You do.
I say no to everything. No is my default. Then I come back like, we could try it. Um, so saying that to say, I had to suspend my normal
Way of thinking and living.
operating space because I'm in a brand new place. So my priorities changed in terms of all right, work is important. That's what got me here, but I want to build new relationships, but also not forget about my friends that's here. So being a transplant is a different experience, I'd say.
And I think you hit on something that also is important, and that is the fact that your work life balance and what you prioritize will change over time. Like my
Facts.
work life balance right now is probably a lot better than it will be when one day I have a family or when
Mm-hmm.
one day I change where I live or something of the sort. It is always changing and evolving. And so I think that there is no perfect work life balance in general. It is it's tailored to each person in their specific situation.
Now we're talking about prioritization overall, and for you being a transplant, being in the DMV area, how do you ensure that the things that you have in place, how do you ensure that the old things don't get neglected? Um, Not just you being a good daughter, but your college friends, your sorority sisters, newness. How do you make sure that things are in order so the old things don't get neglected?
So one thing about me is that my friends are quick to pick up a phone.
Hmm.
Them folks, them folks love to call me. Matter of fact, I was on the phone with my friend. We've been friends, oh my gosh, for almost, I think, 10 years now. All of my friends are
Sheesh.
also like really long term. I
Okay,
know I'm only
which is a good
23.
thing.
Yes, but I heard that's rare, but most of my friends have been my friends for somewhere in that 10-year range. I think my newest friend is I've been friends with her for like my newest best friend. We've been friends for 4 years, 5
Okay.
years. So when it comes to making sure that I still am talking to them, communicating with them, being there for them, we be on the phone. We be quick
Mm-hmm.
phone. They're also quick to schedule a flight to come out here. I'm also quick to do a little flight
Oh, y'all
to
got
visit them.
money.
Matter of fact, my friend was just here last week, and that's how we kind of stay, together and in touch. We plan annual trips where we all go. We get up, we save that money, and we go somewhere
Mm-hmm.
together so that we can make sure that we're again always nurturing and supporting one another, because when you do move away from home and when you are new in this space, and to your point, Travaris, how you said you had to say yes to everything to build
Mm-hmm.
those roots, that stuff is hard. And I don't
It
think
is.
people talk about that enough, how when you move, 700 miles, 800 miles, 1,000 miles away from home, that you are kind of expected to start anew. And
Mm-hmm.
I've found that transition was difficult for me, but having those, that core group of friends that I could lean on from the past or from back home made it better.
Yeah, and I would say that I didn't know how courageous it was leaving home
Hmm.
until I was there for like 4 years, 5 years. I was
Yeah.
like, people don't do this. They really don't. People would trip if they move a couple of counties away. But let me go back to what you said. You have a system that is a very well-oiled system. And what
Hmm.
I find is, I don't want to generalize, but women who are well-to-do, y'all be having systems like that. Y'all be
Very
prioritizing.
type A.
You know what I mean? Men,
Y'all
yeah,
stuff.
that's my dog, but I ain't seen him in like 4 years. So you speak about long-term friendships. I'm a bit older than you. I'm coming up on my 20-year Kappa anniversary next year, and I've been friends with these guys, my frat brothers that I've been tight with for like 20 years now, right? So, and I have high school friends that I'm still tight with, but very few and far between.
Mm.
Um, my guys, my groomsmen, the people who were in my wedding, right? Obviously, years later, only came to California to see me graduate from grad school, and I had to make sure, like, y'all, look,
That's it.
that was it. 8 years I was there, and one of my boys been there. He was only there once for my graduation. Another one, I met him in L.A. Yeah, so that was it. It just the it wasn't a priority. I'm like, yo, I'm in.
Mm.
So yeah, so with women, and I would come home often. Well, I'd probably come home as much as I could afford, which is like twice a year.
And you still wouldn't see them?
Oh no, yeah, I would see them when I
Oh,
came
okay.
home.
Okay.
But I think that made it easier for them not to come see me because I would
Mhm.
come home as often. But like, this is Jersey, and I was in California. Like, what we talking about?
Not that he
Um,
come visit you.
yeah.
Oh.
But I think that's what happens with men, which is why I made it a priority to visit my boy in Minnesota
Mm.
because it seems like we were just together yesterday, but this is his third year being there. It's just like, where did the time go?
Where did the time go?
Speaking of where did time go, I want to shift this to the actual work of the work-life balance.
Okay.
And for you, how do you determine what's urgent? Because for those who work in a tech or tech adjacent finance, everything's always a fire. It's
Every
always a fire, right? How do you articulate to yourself what's really a fire and what can be like, man, y'all tripping?
I'm a I'm gonna be point blank. Period. In my opinion, nothing is a fire, and I hate to say that, but unless there is like some really big HR something going on,
Right.
with world changing event that will affect the way that I do my job, it can wait till tomorrow.
It absolutely can.
That is my whole thing. And I think that that is just one of the things that I think people need to get out of. Like you said, in tech, everything is always urgent. And I understand we're working in a very fast moving pace, but
Mm-hmm.
when everything is always urgent, that is the easiest way to burn yourself out. When you are always like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do this all the time, and then you are encouraging others to also think that way, that is the easiest way for the work-life balance to become work and no balance, no life, no nothing else. And so, in my opinion, and this may be very Gen Z of me, some people will disagree, but unless it is truly like this is happening, it's going to affect the way that we work today, right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we can wait till tomorrow, or we can do it, but it doesn't need to be like, because if it is like that, then I'm already anxious. So now I'm naturally anxious, y'all. I'm diagnosed. So I can
I
lick
know.
the throat in the look. Okay, so if people are around me and they're like that, I'm like, okay, now I'm shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't believe in everything urgency. When it comes to me prioritizing things, if something is urgent, I will do that when it needs to be done. But once it gets to around 7 p.m. and it's not done, then it can wait till tomorrow. The business is
Yeah.
closed.
It's closed. It's closed. First of all, before I respond to what you said, I don't see you as being anxious. Maybe because I don't see you every single
Oh,
day, but
well,
like,
I've grown a lot.
you
Younger
see
me,
very cool, calm, and collected. You know.
no, you, that
I know
let
you type A, but
I need to take it more often. Actually, I don't be taking it like I'm supposed to. But I've come a long way. I used to be extremely, and I still get very anxious. I just have learned how to cope.
okay, that makes sense. Um, Something that you hit on, which is burnout, right? And it's the before I get to burnout, the fictitious fire, the fake fire that gets caused. It's like the boy that cried wolf. When there is a real fire, we're gonna be like, is it
Is
right? And
it?
you know what I mean? And I'm glad that I got into this fast-paced environment a little later than I didn't start in this space. So because I had historically been a like rule follower, I probably would have, succumbed to the like, oh, everything's a fire. I got into this space much later. So I was like, I don't think that this is that necessary for me to move heaven and earth to just respond to this one thing when most of the time it's being passed down and it's really not that important. Is it important? Yes. Is it business critical? No.
No,
Right. And having the discernment to be like, all right, this is because of policy change. We have to switch up the verbiage and our forward facing documentation. That stuff is like all hands on deck. We don't know what will happen because the policy change enacts different things.
there are legal ramifications in
Legal
that
is the
is
word.
a fire. But if it is something like somebody said this, or
If
I'm
it's
like, "Well,
I'd like or can we,
mm,
no. Not
no,
right now. Like, no, not right now. Um, but yeah, and like all of those things, it creates anxiety, creates burnout, and you begin not to enjoy the work that you're doing because people are imposing these fake deadlines and things on you. So that kind of bleeds into you said 7 p.m. You got this fake fire. You're trying to work overtime, but you got a yoga class at 6:30. You got to leave for. So now it's impacting
you can
your
know.
ability,
Are you in my
right?
life? That
I'm
was
not.
very
Is yoga your your workout of choice?
not Pilates. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I started going at 7:30 p.m. so that if the fire does hit, yeah.
Yeah. But that's the stuff that the impact just continues to get pushed for like further and further into the forbidden land. Like I mentioned this on another pod, but the place that simply is not supposed to go because it's dangerous over there. It's like you don't go over there. Meaning, like life is supposed to stop at a certain point.
Mm.
Work is supposed to stop at a certain point, and then life begins. And the one thing I commend Gen Z for doing is being able to have the confidence to be able to put that at the forefront,
And
right?
say, stop. I'm not doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah. And like I said, I've been this way for some time, which is why, and I want to make sure we reiterate as often as we can the reason over here is why this podcast exists between me being a millennial and Taylor being Gen Z, but us seeing eye to eye on this stuff. Nobody got time for that burnout shit, man.
Because it is so hard to recover from that. I have personally been burnt out twice now.
Mm-hmm.
One time in college, and I think another time right after I graduated. And I feel like I'm still recovering from what I experienced because it takes so much life out of you to the point where the most just minimal task, the most, the smallest thing feels like the greatest feat.
Yep.
And yeah, it just takes too long to recover. And if you are expected to work at a specific, speed and you're expected to produce these great things, if you're burnt out, you can't even think about what to eat for dinner.
And it's in short, burnout causes analysis paralysis.
Yes.
I I so I'll take you a bit into my life in terms of outside of work, but the small business. Running a clothing brand is incredibly taxing, right? I'll take this hat for example. Every aspect of this hat I designed. And it may look like a regular hat, but under this, the color, the specific color code, this actual the the black and the red and the actual image and the side with the logo and the things on the back, the material. I've created every single piece of that, and it comes with a certain amount of pride, but it also comes with a certain amount of patience and dedicated, tedious changes, right? That makes sure that like you have to pay attention to everything, and not only that, that's making the product, and now I have to figure out a way to market it that people so
Mhm.
people know about it, and that's another set of a list of items. And for me, I excel in the manufacturing and making of it. I do not excel in the selling of it because it requires so much more as a solopreneur requires so much more. So, but when I make it, I end up making shit for myself, you know,
You do be doing.
which is not the point of a business, but it makes me feel like I've accomplished something by making the thing. The marketing and the selling of the thing, it it should be the most important, but it's just like I don't. It's a lot more to do, right? With being a father and being a very present, the husband and being a very present father I don't have the time to dedicate to every aspect, right? The other uh, ability is to outsource. Outsources require resources, which I need all my money.
Mhm.
I need all my money, which is why Taylor and I are very hands on with this podcast. Everything you see here, we doing this ourselves. Um, but you also don't want to get stretched too thin, and you make sacrifices and drawbacks for what you're going to cut. For me, would it be nice for my clothing business to be a multi-billion-dollar brand? Of course. Well, I'm not hurting for money. Can I use some more? Of course. But right now, that's the thing that gets cut, right? And dealing with that is I'm okay with that. But talk to me about when you found yourself being stretched too thin, and how did you recover from said thing?
Ooh, I have a great story for this. For those who are in college listening, please do not be like me. So, when the pandemic started, everything was moved to online. So I could jump from organization meeting A to organization meeting B to organization meeting C, all within, the stretch of maybe 2.5 hours, an hour and a half, however long the meetings were, because I did not have to trek across campus. All I got to do is go from Zoom link to Zoom link. Same thing with my internships. Since a lot of them were remote, I'm like, okay, if I'm working 15 hours over here, but then I got this other job that I can work, another 15 hours over here or 10 hours over here. Then I got this other internship I can work maybe, 7 hours over here. At one point in this is maybe my junior year, somewhere in this realm, I had 3 jobs I was working at one time. So I had literal
Sheesh.
two internships. They were virtual. And then I had one in person job. So I was working about
And
15
going to school.
and going to school. Wait, I'm not done though. There's more. So I was working about probably 15 to 10 hours at internship one. I was working about 5 to 10 hours at internship two. And then I was putting in another 10 hours at the in-person internship. So I don't know.
That's
That's
30.
no,
That's 25 or 30.
yeah, like 30-ish, maybe 35 hours if it's a big week. On top of that, I was going to school full time. And on top of that, I was in, I don't know, like 6 organizations, and I was on the executive board of 4 of them. So, and I also was an ambassador for my college. So I was expected to give tours at least like once a week, maybe a little bit more, depending on the week. So you can imagine. And I'm also Greek at the time. And so that was actually one of the e-boards I was on. So I'm expected to go to these events and it was okay. So that was a lot. And it
That
got
was
to
a
the
lot.
point. Yeah, no. And this is my junior year going into my senior year. It got to the point that you mentioned earlier, Travaris, I had to let something go.
Mm-hmm.
I I have a problem, and I still have this problem where I know when I'm like internally stressed, when my
Mm-hmm.
eyes twitch. I
We
have
don't want your eyes to twitch.
my
We
eyes;
don't want
they
that.
still be twitching actually, but it's a whole nother. We'll talk about that later.
Man, before you slide to her DMs on LinkedIn, you know her eye
I
twitches,
be
just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, just so you know, it's. But I actually twitched a little bit earlier when we started this, but you can't really see it. But I
Nope.
know that I am internally stressed when that eye. It's normally this left eye start doing a little fluttering. At that point, I the most again I talked about this the most minimal thought. Just it was too much to even think about, and it got to a point where I was sacrificing my own mental health to
Mm-hmm.
show up. And so one of those jobs had to go. I had to be honest. One of the especially the in-person job, I had to like
Yeah.
I had to tell them, I said, look, y'all asking too much. It is too much for me to have to go here and go there. Cause it was one of those jobs where you have to like market to students on campus. So I have to go here.
Oh,
I
yeah,
gotta
you
go to
gotta
this
hang
event.
stuff and yeah,
It was too
it's a lot.
much. So I had to end up, stepping back from some of those things because I realized it is great to be ambitious, but when your ambition comes at the cost of your mental health, you have to figure out what is actually the most important. You have to prioritize, which is what we've been talking about so much on this episode. But it just came to the point where I said, okay, it is okay if I need to take a step back. And I think, when we have all this hustle culture nowadays, where it's like, you
Yep.
need to be hustling all the time. You need to be what they say, always on.
Mm-hmm.
Hell no. I'm turning this shit off.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right. Right. Right.
And I had to be okay with that. And from someone who grew up in a family where I was always expected to be the best and do the best, I had to just let that go. I could not, it was too much to handle at that time.
You said one thing that I think it sums up a lot of what we're chatting about, which is cost.
Cost.
Um, Nothing, and when I say free, I'm not talking about monetarily. Nothing is free. When you take on one endeavor, you're sacrificing another. Like we mentioned, if you work until 7 p.m., you're sacrificing your Pilates time because it's now bled into, other parts of your life. And for you to have two internships, an in-person job, an on-campus job, and be on exec boards, plus going to school full time, your plate looks like it's a Thanksgiving plate, everything on it, but
It was even Thanksgiving. It
you
was
don't know what's what. You don't know what's what. And that bleeding is the thing that kind of makes it so that who could blame you for not wanting to make a decision, right? That analysis paralysis. It's inevitable, right? But that word cost is sticking with me. Before I move on more with cost, I asked Taylor this a couple pods ago. How are you surprised that you're successful? If you just named all the things you were doing at that one time, there should not be a surprise. That's a rhetorical question. I don't want you to say nothing. Just think about it. Um, but the word cost sticks out to me because when we exchange, we do when we if I need something, it requires me to give something to get that, right? Commerce. This thing costs $10. I have a $10 bill. I give it to you. You give it to me. The same things exist when you are managing your time. You are dovetailing what am I willing to relinquish in order to gain more on this side. And what often wins is work
right.
and not the personal. And that's the stuff that makes it so that people struggle with work life balance because you have this aspect of, oh, my colleagues are giving more time. My manager requires this of me. And if we were to give, I want us both to answer this question. If you had to give newer professionals some advice on how to navigate the pressures of showing up at work when they may be asked to do too much, what would you say?
Set boundaries.
Mm.
I am terrible. I've always been terrible at setting boundaries, both professionally and personally. And once people overstep your boundaries so many times, you have to force yourself to set them. So my manager and everyone knows that, number one, do not ask me to do anything before 10 a.m. The likelihood of my brain even working before 10 a.m. is slim to none. And I have tested this theory. Even no matter how long I sleep, before 10 a.m., it's not giving the same amount of brain power that I have later in the. It's just true. I tested it the other day. I tried to write an email early in the morning at around like 8 o'clock because it deleted when I wrote it at
Uh,
a.m. That night, the email couldn't even think about what's right. So, to that point, set boundaries. You need to let people know, like, hey, I enjoy doing XYZ. I have to do XYZ during this time. Therefore,
mhm.
I cannot be at work or do things during this time. I am not a morning person. So please, if you can, do not set any meetings before X time. I like to go to Pilates at 7 p.m. So if there is something that I need to do on Monday after 7 p.m., unfortunately, I cannot do that. And as long as you are getting your work done, and as long as you are, again, in the office between whatever those set times are, anything outside of that where you have said, hey, I need to do this, this, and that should be okay. And if that is not okay, this is the time where you need to, take a time and figure out if this is the type of job that you really want. Because as I mentioned before, your job can come and go. Your life, what's going on outside in your life, you only get this one. So always set boundaries. And that's across the board, whether that's with your boss, your friend, your husband, your boyfriend, whatever the case may be, set boundaries.
That was a very high achieving Gen Z answer
Okay.
because everybody doesn't have the ability to communicate to the manager in that way.
It's hard. It is. And I will
No, so
say,
people they're incapable. They don't have the space to do it. Like
uh,
it's not even about if they have the words. Their work isn't structured where they can even suggest those types of things, right? And I can speak from that perspective because maybe no coincidence. I've always been a manager favorite, right? People have
you
always
yeah,
enjoyed
teacher's pet
my
type favorite type.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I've always been able to meet my managers where they are. But with that, I've had the ability to have glimpses into my colleagues not having those relationships, and I do think that number one, your point of setting boundaries is 100% the case. But in different industries, boundaries look different.
Mm,
So, working in education, you had to be there at 9, and you were not supposed to leave until 5. So, if you had things that you needed to do outside of that, well, damn, it's crazy. Try on Sunday, maybe, right? So there was no wiggle room, right? Um, what that required for me to do is to appeal to what they enjoy. Now,
mm,
this is maybe just a skill that I have, but I want to share it with you all. It's a long term play, but you figure out what your manager does in their off time. I mean, like, what do they enjoy a lot, right? And you just find ways to ask them, like, if you've had a manager that likes golf, like, when do you have time to like play golf? It's just Saturday, Sunday. Do you play off? Do you play after work at all ever? How do you find the time to do it? And then you begin to get in their brain, and maybe that will allow you to figure out how you can either replicate it, or you can just ask, "Hey, you can introduce what you have going on, and then say like, is it okay if I leave today at 4:15 because I got to take care of this and that." That is if you're like being super burnt out and you're asking to work hours that you're not supposed to. If you're not able to do that, then you might have to find an opportunity for you to cut some corners. You might have to take care of things at lunchtime. Or, but I think overall, the thing that you need to do is to do what is best for you, even if you work in an environment that is limiting. And I'm aware that everybody doesn't have the same freedoms that Taylor and I have with the work that we do, but that doesn't mean you can't find ways to prioritize things that you need, even if you have a manager that is less than accommodating.
I love that you said that, Travaris, because I think, again, being Gen Z and being in tech, I've been spoiled. And I
Mm-hmm.
tend to
Caviar.
neglect, yeah, the caviar man, I tend to
Mm-hmm.
neglect, and the fact that other people do not have these same types of flexibility. I think our
Right.
company does a really good job of valuing flexibility and giving people that. And I think maybe again, this is a Gen Z and me speaking, but I feel like every company needs to do that. So if you are listening and you are leading a company and you are not allowing your employees to live a flexible life and to work in a flexible environment, fix that. Thank you.
Fix yourself. Fix your everything.
Fix it.
We already know they're not listening because this podcast is for people who encourage ambition, who is ambitious and wants the best for their people. If you want the best for your people, you won't be putting such sanctions on your people. That's just not something
True.
that you would do. So if I'm being honest, I don't think they listening, right? Like,
They are
and if you have a manager who is unwilling, go ahead and send this to them and let them know that we advocate for you to
yes.
let your people go.
Let my people go.
Let them go.
Go.
Pick up their dry cleaning, go to the bathroom, leave early
Go
within
get their
reason.
kids. I
Go
mean,
get your
what if they just
kids.
want to go for a walk? Them offices be stuffy.
It's nice today, right? This not this weather, but they're like, it's 70 degrees, 75 degrees maybe, and their kids had a half a day, but they got to go be a latchkey kid and then risk somebody, not feeling safe because I got to be in the office because my manager says so, and she's in her office playing Candy Crush. She ain't even working for real.
Not any.
So I don't know what old folks do. So, or I don't know what managers who aren't cool do. I figure
They
non-cool
probably do
managers play
play.
Candy Crush like
They
on the
they be
desktop
in there
though.
playing solitaire.
Yeah, like on the desktop. But like Microsoft Paint, I don't know what y'all be doing. I only identify with the cool people, and cool people don't we don't be tripping on that.
Yeah,
So
flexible.
yeah, I just don't understand um that aspect. But something else I'll touch on for those of you out there who are parents, this work-life balance as a parent is really delicate, right? I say that to say because the thing that allows you to have the ability to provide for your kid is work,
Mm.
right? And I never wanted to be so driven by the work that I'm driven by the money that I'm away from home a lot. Um, so I prioritize being as close to home as I can, which is tough going to the office 3 times a week and then having to travel as long as I do to the, but when I do get a chance to be with my family, like sometimes I don't got to do nothing. Just be under the same roof, right? Just watching my daughter play, or now she's super vocal and she's like, "Daddy, sit with you," which means that she wants to sit with me, or she'll tell me, "Come here," or she's like, "Daddy," like she was upstairs earlier. She was actually brushing her teeth, and she's like, "Daddy, brush teeth." It's like, oh, I got to drink my tea first, but I'll brush my teeth with you, no problem. So I prioritize those moments because 2 years she'll be in school,
Mm.
right?
Right.
This time, these hours from like 8 in the morning, to noon, where she's really active, she'll be in school. So I prioritize finding ways to be close to my family more than ever, because what you do not know, for those who aren't parents, chew on this for a bit. You only have about 4 years of your child to yourself, and then their world has them, right?
Mm.
Not only do they go to school, but they're influenced by teachers, other your peers, their parents teaching them things. And I heard somebody say this earlier. Sometimes you're outnumbered. You're outnumbered by societal factors that contribute to the person that your kid will turn into. So this is foundational time that we're laying this really intricate, strong foundation for our daughter that I want to be here for. Um,
Mm.
and I really want to ensure that we make it so that she's not going to be susceptible to as many things because her mom and I aren't just chasing our careers and flying from this place to that place and neglecting this, you know, really vulnerable time. So I'm sure other parents can relate. If you can't, do better. But yeah, this balance as a parent is really really a fine line.
Mm. All right, that was deep, Travaris. I want to ask you a question about that though,
Hmm.
because you talked about how, you are an entrepreneur, you are a
Hmm.
husband, you are a father, but what things do you do for yourself? I know you talked about basketball. Other than again your business and things of that sort, what are some things you do for yourself to prioritize your well-being? And we know that getting a haircut every week is one of them.
Nothing, honestly.
No,
Mm-mm.
Lord,
So
look,
I heard. Oh man, this is going to get deep, and I don't want to get too deep because I might botch it or mess up the what I heard. But literally before this podcast, I saw this Instagram clip about uh, a religious guy. I think he's a pastor, a preacher. But what he was saying was what a man's job is, right? So he was describing. This is not my words, but I understand some of what he said. He said that he has a friend who was complaining about what his wife is and what his wife is not doing. And he's like, so the pastor was like, you sound like you're like not happy, like you're dying. And he's like, that's how I feel. And then the pastor's like, do you not know that you got married at an altar? You know what an altar is? Where like you are giving yourself up. And he was like, oh snap. And then he started going into Adam and Eve. And it was like, the first Adam should have died for Eve, not with her.
mm,
Meaning that when you become a husband or a father, you are on the front lines to ensure that their life is good. For me, I find joy in providing for them.
ooh, that's
So
come on, Tavares. Now
yeah.
let's everyone take a moment to clap.
So the fun is planning. Like we're going to Disney soon, planning Disney, and the fun is I do have to go to New York City to work and just come and building that foundation so I could come home and like have those times. So basketball is my only like outlet. And I try to chill with my friends, but that's kind of it. But building this life, I knew that I was ready for marriage because I was really ready to not worry about myself and really build something outside to ensure that those two people don't have to worry about much.
And I think this goes into the point for some of our younger listeners tuning in is that when you are in these points of life, when you can only worry about yourself,
Yeah.
so really focus and hone in on that to do what you love, because there will come a time, maybe in your life, where a lot of your time and your energy will be focused on providing for
Yeah.
other people. So if you are in your early 20s, if you are not married yet, you don't have any kids, even if you're in your 30s and you're not married, you don't have any kids, whatever point of life you are in, if you are in a point of life where it is you, make sure that you put that energy into yourself and your own interests.
That's 100% a fact. And I've always been considerate. I've always been what I think is a good guy. Or what Issa Rae said for the insecure fans,
I love
fuck
it.
boys think they're good. They're fuck boys because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. Think they're good guys. Could have been one of those back in the day. Who knows? But I've always felt like I was standing for the right things, but I was not always living to build a life with somebody. When I bumped into that person, I was like, oh, okay, this changes, right? So I think that when when you shift gears, but until then, don't rush it, right? You prioritize yourself in your personal life until otherwise.
Right.
You prioritize you until you don't. Um, with that said, I wanted to shift over to Taylor so she begin to share some cool things with y'all with our segment Tips with Taylor. So
Tips with Taylor. So one thing is going to go back to what I recently talked about, how I said I had 15 internships, not really, but how I had so much going on at one time. one of the things I notice students doing is trying to do as many things as possible to fill up their resume. Now, while it is good to have a full resume, it is important that you are making impact where you are. So if you are in 20 orgs, but you only go to meetings at 5 of those organizations, which I know a lot of people like that, then it may be in your best interest for you to, write it down and figure out what you really are a part of and what you really want to stay a part of. Because it is just so often that people will join things because it looks good on paper, but then they never show up. So to all the students listening, to all the younger professionals listening, make sure that if you are joining something, if you are being a part of something, that you are committed and that you are giving it your all. You're not just doing something just to put it down on a resume. Because if somebody asks you about what you have done in that organization, unless you're going to make up something, what can you say? What can you speak on? There is so much more impact and there is so just much more benefit that you get from it for yourself when you are actively engaged and involved in something. So don't just do stuff to do stuff. Do stuff because you want to make an impact, whether that is helping other people or helping yourself at the end of the day. So
Being intentional.
intentional.
Gotta be intentional.
Yes.
Don't do things just to do them, you
Oh,
know?
oh. Okay. Now that was my little tip. But Travaris, you got to give us some concise advice to close out our episode. So we actually had somebody in the audience, one of our viewers from before ask us a question. And
Okay.
they asked, they said, what if you have a good manager, but they are scatterbrained? How do you prioritize what you're going to work on for the most impact?
Oh man, I might have two answers for this. I'll answer traditionally, and then I'll answer for if you work in like a fast-paced tech environment where people are generally more understanding. So if you work in a space like we do, Taylor, that boundary setting that you talked about before should be pretty easy. Um, if your manager, as a former manager in tech, I think that if your manager is coming to you scatterbrained, that there's trust
Mm,
because everyone else they have to have things really formatted in a proper way for them to understand. I think the people who managers come to in a pinch, there's trust there, so you should take that with a bit of a grain of salt. But you should probably be able to push back and say, okay, Taylor, yesterday you asked me to do yada, yada, yada. Here's the magic question. What would you like me to deprioritize?
mm,
That is the answer to the question when you have a relationship with your manager. That is, if you work in a space where your manager's like, I got an idea, or can you work on this, can you work on that? They don't ask everybody on the team to do that. They only ask people that they trust. If you work in a traditional environment where you just might have a manager that's just not aware, right? Begin a document with dates. What are the things they've asked you to do? And then when you have your one-on-one with this person, just ask like, okay, here's what I'm working on right now. Here's my progress. And I wanted you to know that all these things might not be able to be at 100%. Which one do you want me to, which one are you okay with me like lessening the percentage that we're taking that cost, taking 25% of this and putting into that? Which one do you want me to take from and add to, right? You have to have a bit of that conversation like, okay, now there's only but so much time in the day. You're asking me to do this thing, but what will it cost?
mm,
Right. So I think the level of understanding you have to have is articulation of the articulation of what is going to require for you to do this at a high level, because it's impossible for you to probably do this at this pace for a long time. And that's when you get the burnout, that's when you get the analysis paralysis, and it's harder for you to work. It's hard for you to achieve your best if you're burnt out at work because you have to come to work. Whereas if you're burnt out at home, you don't want to cook. All right, I'll just eat out or something. But
right.
long story short, you have to ensure that you communicate what you are observing, but also do it in a way that meets them where they are so they can understand and not, take offense to it.
enjoyed that, Travarus. That is fantastic, fantastic, fantastic points. And to that, I always make sure that I document everything with my manager, period, from the date
Yeah.
to when it was completed to when it was asked to all of that. So I love that you dropped that tidbit in there. I think that is really, really, really important, especially when people want to, measure impact and then when they were asked and what is, again, of the most importance. So love that.
Yeah, we should do a whole episode on documentation because as we walk this fine line between elaborating on things that we experience in the workplace, some of this stuff really trickles out into our personal lives. And I think you, how you are at work, is probably a microcosm of how you are uh, in the real world. I'm not sure if I've ever met someone with a clean desk and a dirty home. I'm sure that it translates.
Hmm.
If your desk is dirty at the office, I'm sure that you got some dirt. You're not dirty, but you might be messy at the crib. So I think that you are who you are, right?
Hmm.
Unless you were Batman and Spider Man at nighttime, then it's like okay, sure. Um, but yeah, I think that we elaborated well on work life balance. Does it exist? Does it not exist? How you feel?
Whew. I think that it exists sometimes. I think there will always be a time. I wish there wasn't, but there will always be a time where you will have to give up something to get
Mm-hmm.
something. And that is, I think it is truly, when we say work life balance, it is a balancing act. Sometimes the scale will be on this side and it'll be down on the other side, and sometimes it'll be up on the other side. It truly
Mm-hmm.
just depends. I think there is a way to get it even, but will it stay even? Most likely not.
And what it requires in order to stay even is boundary setting,
Yeah.
as Taylor articulated earlier. With that said, we'll see y'all next time. Thank y'all for tuning in and peace.
Peace.